football. So the recruiting bust that we are talking about is the last, I believe, 20 years was your parameters, 10 to 20 years, something in that range. So our original plan was to each do 10. I think we ended up breaking it down where we each have five. I have
Right.
five and you have five, Dre. And
Right.
we definitely want Mark's perspective on it as well. Um, so yeah, I mean, we can just kind of dive right into it. Dre, who is your first mention as one of Michigan's in the recent recruiting bus?
Right. And before I start, I just want to give a little bit more of a I want everybody to know a little bit more of my thought process, what I view as a recruiting bust. That doesn't mean that a player was a total failure, like they didn't touch the field all the time, or they didn't have moments. It means based on the expectations coming in, the amount of schools that wanted them besides the University of Michigan, um, how that weighed versus what actually happened. Right. So don't be surprised if we say a player and like, hold on, that guy played. Oh, I remember he had this moment here, or he played well for a couple games, or this season. It's about expectations versus reality. Right. So the first one I have is Sugar Shane Morris out of Warren De La Salle. I
Mm.
remember for years hearing about this left-handed quarterback, special, prototypical pocket kid, can make all the throws. Big time quarterback being recruited to the University of Michigan, and he never panned out. Took him a while to hit the field, and the times he did hit the field, he was shaky at times. I think we all remember where one of Brady Hoke's biggest embarrassments on national TV was the way he handled the Shane Morris concussion.
Hmm.
And we all remember Shane stumbling, on the field. And it was a very, very concerning look. And the kid just never really bounced back from that. He never really found it, and lived up to the expectations. He ends up being a grad transfer at Central Michigan University, my alma mater, and he actually does decent for them. But he's no longer playing football. It looks like, and he never quite panned out. Based on the expectations coming in.
Okay, I think that's a fair one. I think everybody remembers, when Shane Morris was on campus and that he was going to be a big deal. So I definitely agree with that one. Mark, did you have any thoughts on the Shane Morris
Yeah, so a lot
time?
of things came to mind when Dre threw out Shane Morris. I didn't know it was Sugar Shane Morris. I was unaware of that little
That
nickname
that
from
wasn't
back
his
in the
official
day.
nickname. That was just some people made. That was something me and Dez would kind of
Okay,
do and
okay.
stuff like that. But no, don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for him that what he's remembered for is, yeah, that the hit against Minnesota, the whole incident on the field that shouldn't have resulted, and obviously he was just a figure in the confusion there. But to Dre's point, looking at his numbers here, he never. Oh man, because besides that moment, what came to mind was him playing in a bowl game against Kansas State, and
Buffalo Wild
Michigan
Wings Bowl,
lost.
right?
What's
Buffalo
that?
Wild Wings Bowl. It was the Buffalo
Yes,
Wild Wings Bowl.
and I believe the score was 31
Exciting.
to 14. I'm looking at his career numbers. I would have guessed that he threw touchdown passes at Michigan. He never threw a touchdown pass at Michigan. No TDs, 5 picks in his career at
Mm,
Michigan.
Yikes,
sizzling,
that's
sizzling.
rough. It's pretty
Look,
rough.
it doesn't help. And Malachi, I hope I said that word right. We are getting to that guy. Don't you worry about that. That guy is definitely on my list. So don't you worry about that. And this is not ranked, okay? For me, I'm just
Oh
gonna
man,
give it one my five.
that
So
I just took a look at the chat there. Oh man,
oh yeah, we're
the,
getting
the
Okay.
to
the
him.
people
Oh
the
yeah.
people are dialed in with us. They're
Yeah,
dialed in.
we're getting on it. We're getting to that one.
And before
No,
we either move on or bury Shane Morris in the conversation, I don't want to,
Yeah, let's not bury
not
them.
use my words in a certain way. But to Dre's point, let's look at the bright side. Yeah, Central Michigan is a senior, 3,200 yards, 27 TDs, 17 picks, had a nice season to finish out his collegiate career.
yeah.
Well, my guy is a bit of the same light, but just didn't finish out his college career well. The first person I went with was Dylan McCaffrey. Coming in, had a lot of hype going on. And the thing that I remember, and Dre, I'm not sure if you remember this, but I remember seeing a high school highlight from Dylan McCaffrey when he was coming to Michigan and committed. And I remember vividly calling you, Dre, and just saying, I mean, I saw him throw like a 10-yard stop route, something like that. But when the ball came out, it just didn't look like a what I would assume a high level Big Ten quarterback would look like. I'm like, it looked, I mean, it looked like it was a noodle arm and super random, but Stevie Threet was a quarterback who was from
Ooh,
actually
throwback.
the city that I actually live in now. But he went to Arizona State. He had some concussion issues, things like that. But when I was in college, he was in high school, and with just being local, went to watch him. Yeah, I think maybe once or twice. But watching that guy throw the ball, I'm like, it was clear this guy is a Division 1 high level quarterback. Like you could see, I mean, he almost threw the ball too hard. Like his receivers had difficulty catching it because he threw the ball so hard. Like to me, it was clear. And seeing that clip of Dylan, even before he even suited up, it just was odd to me because number one, the why would you use a clip where he doesn't look his absolute best and he doesn't look impressive? So it was just odd to me, and it was one of those things where it was just one 6-7 second clip, and they just would keep looping it, but just never. I didn't see it. I know he had some limited time, and he also had some injuries, concussion. I know a lot of people probably remember, I think it was against Wisconsin where he had a pretty serious concussion, and there was a lot of talk about that potentially hit being dirty, so on and so forth. So I think for him it was a little bit a bit unfair on my part, but nonetheless, even the times where he was healthy, like I never got the vibe that he was going to be that guy that a lot of people talked about of taking Michigan to the next level. And he ended up, transferring. I think he went to Northern Colorado, and even
Look at
there, I
that.
mean, he really didn't do much at all this past season. Had 264 pass attempts, 1,300 yards, 5 touchdowns, 7 picks. So it just for me, I just didn't. I just remember seeing that from the beginning. That first clip that I saw, like this doesn't look like a special arm. This doesn't look like a guy who's gonna come in and just throw the ball past 5-star defensive backs and thread the needle on some high level defenses. So yeah, Dylan McCaffrey was the first person on my list. So Dre, what are your thoughts?
Um, you know, speaking of the Wisconsin game, that's where Michigan quarterbacks go to die. Like that's where we just tend. Like I swear, it was like 3 years in a row. We had Brandon Peters get pent in half, and then we had the following year we had Dylan McCaffrey. I'm like, guys, just slide. Please stop running when we go at Wisconsin because it just never turns out well. So that's why I'm like, hey, Cade, no running. Both you and JJ chill out. Anytime we go to Wisconsin, because it never turns out good. That's just put that disclaimer out there. Yeah, no, you did do that, Des. You did call me right away. You said, "Hey, man, this guy's small. He doesn't like he has a special arm. I don't see it." And I think I always go back to the size thing. One thing I can never understand is like with his frame, 6'5" kid, very tall kid. He is athletic. Like I definitely saw there were flashes. You saw, that he is very athletic family, obviously. That he could run well. Then I'm like, how can he not put on any weight? I mean, you look at his brother Christian. A built 5'11", 6-foot running back. So I know he can do it, right? And it's like, well, I mean, you can't play in the Big Ten and have a small frame at quarterback. You won't last. You won't last. It's a very, very physical conference, and especially with the way that Harbaugh likes to play. I was very shocked where you don't really expect a true freshman to come in extremely built, especially at the quarterback position, but you would expect by their second or third year on campus to see, especially in the lower half, like them start to gain weight. And he never really did. It was so weird to me. So it wasn't surprising that he started having injury issues. And a lot of times, especially at the quarterback position, it's not always talent why they don't pan out. A lot of times it's situation, it's coaching. Because once a kid loses his confidence, and one of the guys on my list, I think definitely falls into this category. Once they lose their confidence, it's hard for them to get it back. It's hard, and you need if there's any position that you need to have confidence and understand timing and rhythm, it's the quarterback position. So I just feel like he never quite got his body where it needed to be. He never quite, built his confidence where it needed to be, and it didn't pan out. And someone put a comment that I agree with. Like maybe Harbaugh and his staff should have recognized early that even though he's a talented player or talented athlete, maybe his future wasn't best at quarterback. Maybe they should have transitioned him to receiver. That's where his dad plays. His older brother Max, I believe, played receiver at Duke. So, and I think there's another brother that played at Nebraska and transferred, but I think he plays quarterback as well.
Yep.
Look, it's unfortunate. I thought I really did when he transferred to North Dakota State, whatever it's called, North Colorado State or whatever. I think his father is a coach there. I really thought, like, okay, if there's any place that you should shine, it should be at a smaller school and playing for your dad. But I was shocked. I definitely checked his stats at the end of that year to see how he did, and I'm like, man, so
not great.
Yeah,
not anything to write home about.
No,
Nothing
so
to write home about.
he was definitely underwhelming. I'll say a bust compared to expectations.
Mark, what are your thoughts on old Dylan McCaffrey?
My thoughts are pretty brief. I can't say I remember a whole lot about Dylan McCaffrey. What I remember is a whole lot of talk about him.
Oh yeah,
but I don't remember a whole lot about him. But yeah, he was much like Shane Morris. Now, Dylan McCaffrey just dug up the numbers. We'll give him 3 more touchdown passes than Shane Morris, and never threw a pick, at least in 35 attempts. But probably a lot of mop up against some inferior foes. So let's not get too crazy over his numbers. But so Morris was the 3rd-rated quarterback in the country coming out of high school. McCaffrey was number 5. So they were both top 5 quarterbacks. And Shane Morris was a top 70 player. McCaffrey wasn't far behind, top 123 in his class. So they were both supposed to do something, and it just didn't happen.
All right, Dre, who you get next on your list?
Yeah, Mike 383. Thank you. This is a fun topic. We appreciate it. I thought it would be a good way to get people engaged. So I'm glad you're enjoying it. Next is we thought, oh my God, we got God coming in at running back. Oh,
Green goes blue. I already know it's coming. That hashtag was trending.
Yes,
it was trending.
I was on YouTube looking at, typing in this kid. I'm looking at his highlights. Oh, he's a man amongst boys. Just running guys over. Derrick Green, running back, and I believe out of Texas. 5-star running back out of Texas.
Yes.
Wanted by everyone across the country. And
any and everybody. Yes.
The University of Michigan got this kid. Oh, you would have thought that we were getting Walter
Payton, Herschel Walker, mix them all together. They all had a child, and it was Derrick Green.
Yes, the chosen.
Green goes blue. I'll never forget that hashtag was trending. Hashtag Green goes blue. I'll never forget that.
My goodness. He got to campus, didn't play, got incredibly overweight. And I'm like, and what was telling is that it's like, okay, I tried to rationalize in my brain, and I think the Michigan coaching staff did as well. Okay, how can we salvage this kid? He doesn't have the body type to be a cowbell or to be someone that could be our future back, but maybe he can use his strength, his size, and power to be a short yardage guy. And I never forget that they would put him in on short yardage situations, and he was getting put on his butt. I'm like, what is this? I'm like, oh my God. It was a total flame out. I was so disappointed. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that he ended up transferring to TCU or going to TCU. Don't think he did anything there. Derrick Green is one of the biggest busts in Michigan recruiting history. Oh, it was hurtful, so hurtful.
He's high up there. Like I said, I will never forget the green goes blue hashtag, and it was odd. Like the freshman year, you can a lot of times you can understand that, right? Playing running back, it's difficult, because in high school when you're that high level of a player, you're not all the time asked to do everything a running back should, right? It's hey, we've got this guy, he's better than everybody else. We're not going to ask him to pass block. We're either going to hand him the ball or we're going to throw it to him. So he doesn't need to pass block. He doesn't need to understand pass protection. None of that. We give him the ball or we swing him out and we throw him the ball. That's what we do. So you can understand that moving up to, the college level, obviously a big time program, that a lot of times picking up those types of things can be difficult for a player. You see it a lot, and more so going from college to pro, but nonetheless, it's the same thing. Understanding football at a bigger scope than just what I do as a running back, knowing everybody's job and what's going on in the play. So you can understand that freshman year, but after that, that sophomore year, you started to think like, okay, well, he's at least gonna split time, right? And it just never panned out. It never happened. And the funniest part was, I believe I'm correct, Derrick Henry came out in that very same class. So it's tough to look at, Derrick Green, who I'm pretty sure was rated above Derrick Henry.
Well,
You look at a guy where you say, man, one guy, by the time he was done is a 2,000-yard rusher, Heisman Trophy, national champion, and another guy, I mean, basically never touched the field. So it's quite the contrast.
He ate his way off the field. I'm sorry, man. Like
it just was.
That was
oh
so,
man,
that's hard. It's one thing when a kid, has injuries. You can't really control that, right?
Correct.
That sometimes that happens. Kids are highly, Grant Newsome was who's the current tight ends coach for Michigan, 4-star tackle. Like he ends up, having to medically retire from the game. Like that those things happen. So, but when a kid, has high talent, especially at a skill position, and does not do the right things. I'm sorry, you can't tell me he was doing the right things and he's gaining weight playing running back. It's very, very disheartening and it's very frustrating. So yeah, Derrick Green will live on in Michigan folklore in terms of recruiting forever. Absolutely.
Man, you guys are bringing up good memory. I mean, you guys are bringing up memories of Michigan football. Some of these names, my goodness, I haven't thought about for years. Derrick Green. So, yeah, you guys are doing a phenomenal job of just painting a picture of some of these guys. And yeah, boy, he was supposed to be big time. I'm looking at his numbers here, and he had 2 big games in his career, not against anybody good, but that's another thing. You bring up numbers for a guy that played like at Michigan. If he had a little bit of playing time and compiled a few numbers, but you got to go to the opponent. So as soon as Dre was talking about, man, getting thrown down for 2-yard losses and just not being able to move the chains or do anything, I go straight to his first year. He came out, probably people got excited. Central Michigan, 11 carries, 58 yards, his very first game in college. Then next week against Notre Dame, he got 1 carry, 1-yard loss. A couple weeks later, 3 carries against Penn State, gained a yard on 3 carries. Then against Nebraska, he had 8 carries for 11 yards. So a lot of 1-yarders there. And, he had a big day against App State the next year for $170 and a touchdown and 15 carries. But against all the good teams, it was a rough go. It was a rough go for Derrick Green. Wow.
It was like he blew a tire. It's like the moment he made contact, he blew a tire and it just collapsed. I was like, what is going on, man? Like this kid's 5'10", 5'11", 225 pounds. I mean, he's huge, built, solid, right, from the ground up. So you think, when he touches the football, he's not going to go down on the first hit, right? At least he should fall forward. I can't tell you how many times I saw that kid get hit on contact by safeties, right? And he is falling flat like he had a flat tire. Oh my goodness.
Man, every time you guys size it up and I look at the numbers, it just like fits perfectly. You know, you talk about, I think I would have a chance to fall forward on this. The very last carry of his career. Though this is just poetic, just a 5-yard loss. There we go. It's tough to lose 5 yards on a running play.
It is. It's very difficult. But if anyone can do it, it's Derrick Green. He can do it.
Yeah.
Wow.
It couldn't have been with his speed. He definitely was trying to stretch a play. You know, sometimes running backs lose plays, lose yards because they're trying to do a little bit too much dance in the backfield. He was not a dancer. So, I'm sure it was not that. He only can do one thing, north to south, And
he didn't do that all that well.
And he didn't do that well at all. Just saying.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, you're next. I'm sorry.
My next one, I'm switching my order because I believe Mike 38 had mentioned it. 3883. Sorry. My next one is that I'm going with is Shea Patterson, and I know people will think that it's a little crazy considering he threw for over 2,500 yards both seasons. But the thing is Shea Patterson was brought here to win a national championship and at minimum to win the Big Ten. Like, that was the reason he was here. He was, the Ole Miss situation happened and he was, available to transfer and was eligible right away after some litigation, I guess. So when he came here, I mean, it was a big deal. It was, I'm not sure I would say it was as big as Derrick Green, but it was a very big deal when it comes to the scope of college football, because we had just seen what Shea had done at Ole Miss as a really young player, but just the ability to push the ball down the field, strong arm, was able to make plays even with his feet. And coming to Michigan, the thought was, you've got a 5-star quarterback, which Jim Harbaugh, at that time had seemed to have a difficult time getting those guys. So you have one who is, I would say people would have called him Shea Patterson proven at that point, teamed up with Jim Harbaugh, who is the quarterback whisperer. Like, this is a match made in heaven. Who knows what Michigan's going to be able to do. And the thing that I look at are just the big games with Shea Patterson. I took some just quick notes. 2018, his first game, played Notre Dame. He was 20 for 30, 227 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. Not awful, but you'd love to see a little bit more. You've got Ohio State that year, 20 for 34, 187 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. The 3 touchdowns, 1 pick sounds great, but 187 yards on 20 completions that's kind of difficult to do. And then in the bowl game against Florida, he's 22 for 36, 236 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. In 2019, he had some really, really rough games. Wisconsin was 14 to 32, 219, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. Penn State, 24 for 41, 276, 0 touchdowns, 1 pick. Ohio State, he was 18 for 43 for 305, 1 touchdown and 1 pick. And the bowl game against Alabama, 17 for 37, 233 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. I mean, you bring in high-level guys to play well in those big games, in the games that you need them. Like, you want to see the high quality or the highly rated guys. You want to see them perform well. And that's the whole point of getting them. Number one is that you lean on them in those difficult situations. And I think some of it can be blamed on Jim Harbaugh, because I think that at that time the offense was still really conservative. But the difficult part is the times when Shea threw the ball more, he performed even worse. So it was almost one of those things where you had to keep him kind of in the middle, because if you went too much, his performance went down. So he was one I put just because, I mean, it's rare that you get a proven guy that comes into the program at that time. And it just, the expectations, I think it goes back to kind of what you mentioned at the beginning, Dre, was the expectations of these guys. It was expected that Shea was going to come in and light up Ohio State and light up Michigan State and beat Notre Dame and all these things. In the first game, I mean, they lost the first game that he started. Now, you can't put all of that on him, but if you were to ask Shea Patterson, he probably doesn't think he played all that well in that game, and I would probably agree. So Shea is my second person on the list.
His swag is
Dre,
fantastic, though. His
say it
swag,
again.
his dressing swag was fantastic. I mean, dude, at the Penn State 2018 Penn State game at Penn State, or 19, I think it was 18. You know, he has on the all white Michigan uniform. He has the visor. I think he has the all white gloves. Oh, they were sweet, and he's spatted with white tape. Oh, he looks sweet, man. Didn't play that great, but no, Shea's You know, I think Shea fits this list. Shea, you know, like he played, like you say, as a true freshman at Ole Miss, he played really well. I remember Harbaugh getting on the plane, getting on the jet, you know, flying down there to talk to him, you know, to sell him on the idea of coming to Michigan. And when they got him, it was like, you know, distinctly, I remember us being at work talking about how big this was. And because it wasn't like a true freshman kid coming in who was inexperienced and you didn't know. No, this kid was a on the field study that we saw that he was highly recruited coming in, and he actually can play. And you felt like we knew what we were getting. Like, okay, no, we know exactly what we're getting. This kid has it. He has the talent. Harbaugh finally got his quarterback. That was the thing. Harbaugh finally has his quarterback. He shouldn't have any other excuses. And it just never quite panned out. And, you know, like I said, when things start to go wrong for a quarterback, it's rare that they find themselves again. You know, he's gone on to, you know, not make it. I think he was undrafted free agent with the Chiefs. You know, barely was able to sit on their practice squad. Now he was ended up being the first.
He was the number one draft pick. So don't forget about that.
USFL, okay, and then he gets cut by the good old Michigan Panthers. So obviously, the state of Michigan does not work out for him. You know, there are, you know, speculations that, you know, he wasn't the best leader, you know, or he didn't have the best leadership qualities of a really good leader. You know,
a lot of golf. If you remember that that press conference kind of media scrum that Josh Gaddis had, it wasn't great. It was like the opening practices. And Josh Gaddis had said out of his mouth, well, yeah, no, Shea's looking pretty good, and I'm glad, man, because he played a lot of golf this summer. I'm like, why would you say that to the media? That is, I mean, I never let that go. Drake can attest to it. I never let that go. Like,
what? So we all like golf. Golf is great. You know, it's a great game. But hey, man, you gotta, it's, you know, new offensive coordinator may want to just kind of plug in, you know. But you know, and I think he fits this list. He never quite panned out. Talented kid, you know, show flat. Even at Michigan, there were times like, okay, that was a nice throw. You know, like he has talent. I mean, that was a really good comeback effort by Michigan in the 2018 game, the whiteout at Penn State. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's the game where Ronnie Bell dropped the either tying touchdown or go-ahead touchdown in the end zone.
Yep.
And I was thrown by Shea, you know. So I mean, it was a really good game. And like I said, he had flashes, you know. But my next guy, I've seen him actually in the comments, is Chris Hinton. 5-star kid coming out of high school, defensive end, defensive tackle. Father was an all-pro offensive lineman for the Colts. And he never quite panned out. He saw the field, but he was never a game changer, never someone that you had to worry about game planning for. He essentially was just lost in a wash of, you know, rotational defensive lineman for this team. You know, never mentioned in the likes of Aiden Hutchinson or
even Chase Winovich.
None of those guys, you know. And I did, when I was looking up, you know, Michigan's, you know, recruiting rankings, you know, players, he was like the highest rated defensive lineman I saw on one of them. Like, he was legit 5-star kid, and definitely has a bloodline. And, you know, it was definitely a disappointment. I mean, he didn't even get drafted. I mean, he's an undrafted free agent, I think, with the Colts, if I'm not mistaken. which is like, how
That's
underperform you
difficult.
have to not get drafted. I mean, like, my goodness. I mean, wow. But look, hey, I hope he makes the best of his opportunity, but he never panned out at Michigan at all.
Well, I think the fact that I would ask our viewers, does anyone remember a Chris Hinton flash or high moment? Because I don't remember one at all. So the fact that there's almost nothing, like, good or bad, like, do you remember like a time he missed a sack? Or I think the fact that there's none of that, and with how highly recruited he was, I think that, yeah, I think that says enough about about it. Mark, your thoughts?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is Dre mentioned his dad. His dad did have a really good career. He played for a lot of bad teams with the Colts, but do you know what his dad is most famous for? Despite playing in like 5 or 6 Pro Bowls, really good player, what his dad is most known for is that he was the player that was traded for John Elway when Elway refused to play for the Colts.
That's right.
Wow.
In the Broncos Colts swap.
That's really unfortunate. Now, I will say this. He probably got a lot of flack because, of course, right? The Colts didn't get John Elway, but he was a good player in his own right. So it's probably unfortunate. Like, I saw he made not only was he a Pro Bowler, he was an All Pro. A couple times. So I mean, he was a really good football player.
It's hard to do.
It's
hard. Yeah, it's hard to do.
Yeah, so that's a great tidbit there, Mark. But it's really unfortunate. Kind of hard to live up to John Elway, especially as the offensive lineman.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Very difficult. I'm debating on who I want to pick next, but I think I'm going to go with him. The Heisman Trophy finalist, if I'm not mistaken, Jabril Peppers is next on my list.
Not. Okay.
I absolutely
really
did. Oh
wow.
Yeah. Let's get into it. Let's get into it. So, my biggest thing is, number one, Jabril Peppers won Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year his last year at Michigan. Here are Jabril Peppers' stats the year that he won Defensive Player of the Year. He had a grand total of 66 total tackles, 13 TFLs, which is pretty impressive for an outside linebacker, 3 sacks, and 1 interception. 66 tackles in 12 games. There's no way he should have won the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. That is crazy to me. And the thing that I also think about is, people will talk about probably how impressive he was as a kick returner and a punt returner, which I will give you that, but he had 1 return touchdown in his entire career. 1. So
okay.
Hold on. So to me, you can be elite at something, but the stats have to show at least a little bit. His punt return average was 13.1, which is pretty good. It's no slouch, but that's also not elite. And he had 17 returns his sophomore year and 21 his junior year. So you would think with having so few, that's essentially 1 to 2 per game. You would think that he would have a higher average than that. Rushing, people are going to talk about, well, he played 1,000 positions. He had 5 rushing touchdowns in his basically 2 years that he played on the offensive side of the ball. To me, what I would have loved to see from Jabril Peppers was just more impact. Like, he had 1 interception against Ohio State. That's about the only play I ever remember him making against Ohio State. For the top player, I just need more than that. Like, that's not enough. I'll give him some credit that yes, that I think Michigan did him a bit of a disservice by moving him around a lot. I think he should have stuck at one position, whatever it was, whether it's Viper, corner, safety, etc. But yeah, Jabril Peppers is on my list.
Dre, can I catch you off real quick?
Yeah.
I love this one too, just because I've brought this one up in the past where I was like, Defensive Player of the Year in the Big Ten.
That is nuts.
So I think I believe I have faith in all three of us intercepting the one pass that Jabril
It's a
Peppers
good pass,
intercepted.
wasn't it?
And
It
it
was
wasn't,
like
yeah, it was a tip
tipped
pass.
right in his lap.
Yeah, he didn't have to do anything for
Yeah,
that.
he didn't make a play on the ball, but that's his lone career interception. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and 66 tackles, like and that's total tackles. He
Oh,
had
hold on.
46
Okay.
solo.
See, but Des, I gave you your time. I let you.
Okay.
I allowed you to set the table, right? You know, and to see what's on course. And you know what you're describing to me is not a bust more than it's maybe overhyped, right? So I think it's a lot fair to say that Jabril Peppers was overhyped in terms of his national recognition at Michigan, you know, in terms of being like, you know, Heisman Trophy finalist and all that. And I think that's valid. You know, I think when you take a step back and you get more and more removed from the season and removed from the hype he had while he was at Michigan, and you look back on it, no, he definitely was overhyped a little bit, and shouldn't have been a Heisman Trophy finalist, no doubt about that. And I even would say maybe shouldn't have won Defensive Player of the Year with the Big Ten, but he was a really good football player. And I think that the problem was, almost to your point, is that he never was like dominant or great at any one thing, and that's really hard to do. Not everybody's going to be Charles Woodson. They tried to make him the next Charles Woodson. It's so hard, so bad. I remember, you know, there was talk like, what's he going to wear number 2? You know, like that was a big thing, and he definitely had diversified talents. You know, he played running back sometimes, played receiver. You know, he played, you know, returner, safety, corner. He came in as a corner, and then he ended up playing the viper position, linebacker. They put him almost everywhere besides the, you know, the line. And he showed flashes everywhere. I mean, he took a return for a touchdown. He got his one pick. He made plays in the backfield. He's a really good tackler. I think he had a couple of good runs, reverses, and stuff like that. Maybe call a pass or two at receiver. I mean, he definitely showed flashes everywhere they put him. But he was never really like dominant, or had, I think what you guys may be alluding to is multiple signature moments, right? Like, okay, it's cool that you got a punt return versus Air Force, but you know, I could have used that versus Ohio State. You know what I'm saying? You know, those signature moments that, you know, in a big game that like, wow, we needed that. That was huge. That one interception versus Ohio State could be one, but you know, I need more than one. You know, so when I reflect on Peppers, I don't think that he was a bust, but I think that compared to the hype, it's fair to have a conversation. Was he overrated in that context? For sure.
So the only two things I will say is Colin mentioned that it takes time. It took time for teams to game plan against Jabril. I can assure you, Ohio State did not take any additional time game planning for Jabril Peppers. And number two, you mentioned that he's a really good football player. I agree with that. But, I mean, Brad Hawkins had 60 tackles this past season. And I think Brad Hawkins is a really good football player. I don't think he's an elite talent. So Jabril's going to stay on my list. I'm not taking it off.
No, yeah, but and then you can say that, but like I don't think any of us can say that Jabril Peppers wasn't a good player. You know, and like I see some people may be, you know, a little bit defensive, and like once again, this is like hype versus what reality was. And you know, I think Jabril Peppers was a really good football player. I just think that he could have had more of an impact in bigger moments. Based on, like I said, the hype that he had. You know, it was about as high as he can get.
And maybe hype and expectations are synonymous. I don't know. We'll see.